My name is Riley. I'm 31 years old and currently pregnant with my first child. The baby I've waited my whole life for. And yet, instead of embracing the joy and sacred anticipation of becoming a mother, I find myself battling loneliness in my own home. My husband, Ethan, is 35 and works as a financial manager for a major insurance company in Chicago. He's charming, well-spoken, and to anyone looking in, I must seem like a lucky woman. But only someone who lives with him would know who he really is, and who's just putting on a show for the world. Ethan is almost never home on weekends. He has this habit of driving out to the suburbs to visit his parents, even though they live less than an hour away. I never quite understood why he's so attached to his family. Some weekends stretch for 3 days, and I might see my husband for less than 3 hours. When I got pregnant, I hoped things would change, but no. He still packs his bag and heads to his parents' place like I don't exist. At first, I tried to be understanding. Maybe he just needs space, I told myself. But when the same pattern kept repeating, I could no longer lie to myself. The truth is, Ethan never cared about how exhausted I was getting, or how hard it was for me to stand up from a chair with my belly so big I had to twist myself 3 times just to get up. One snowy winter day, I stood quietly at the front door, watching him hurriedly stuff clothes into his bag and say, "I'll be back before Sunday night. You'll be fine, right?" I had to clench my fists to keep myself from sobbing out loud. No, I'm not fine. I'm about to have a baby, and I'm terrified. But I only nodded, reluctantly, like a maid, not a wife. I took care of myself throughout the pregnancy. Every morning I got up at 6 a.m. to make breakfast for Ethan, even though he usually just took a few bites and rushed off to work without so much as a thank you. After that, I cleaned the house, did the laundry, and went grocery shopping. Once, I dragged home a 20-pound bag of rice, step by step on an icy sidewalk, only to hear my husband say, "You should have bought less, don't overdo it." No, Ethan has never once cooked a meal for me. He's never asked if I needed anything, or where I hurt, or how tired I was. Whenever I mentioned the baby coming soon, he'd dodge the conversation by staring at his phone or the TV. I started to feel like he didn't even want to be a father. Instead of seeking comfort from him, I began journaling. Taking pictures of the small things, the meals I cooked, little sprouts growing on the balcony, the soft golden light at the end of the day. Friends online left encouraging comments, and I clung to those words like a life raft. I longed for a kind word, a hug. Just one evening where my husband didn't rush out of the house to have dinner with his parents. But that seemed impossibly far away. One night, just after I set a pot of stew on the stove, Ethan came home. He tossed his bag onto the couch, took off his coat, and said exactly one sentence. "I'm taking a shower. Don't forget the beer this time." I froze, spoon still in hand. The last time I forgot the beer, he scolded me right in front of the neighbors. I cried afterward, but Ethan didn't care. I said nothing, not because I had nothing to say, but because I was too tired to keep hoping the man I loved would change. I don't know when it started, but Ethan had become as irritable as an alarm clock set wrong. Every night when he came home from work, the air in the house grew thick. Even with my belly swollen and every step aching, he treated me like a machine that never ran out of battery. "You forgot the beer again, Riley," he snapped after opening the fridge. "Can you please be a little responsible?" I pressed my hand against my aching lower back. I meant to go earlier, but the doctor said I should stay in as much as possible. The due date's close. Ethan rolled his eyes. "So I'm supposed to go out late at night just to get it myself? As if I'm not busy enough already." I stayed silent, not because I couldn't speak, but because I knew if I opened my mouth, tears would pour out. I didn't understand why, but the closer my due date got, the colder and more irritable Ethan became. One time, I accidentally left the TV remote in the bathroom. I liked listening to music while soaking my feet, and he blew up, throwing it at the wall. "This place is always a mess. Can you do anything right?" he shouted, making me nearly fall while cleaning the kitchen. Another time, I made roasted meat with mashed potatoes, a dish Ethan used to love. But that day, he barely glanced at it and muttered, "This again? My mom makes it 10 times better." I turned away, swallowing my tears. Every word from him felt like a small cut, slow and deep, growing more painful over time. One night, he came home late, reeking of alcohol. I had saved his dinner on the table, carefully covered it, and left the kitchen light on for him. But when he saw the meal I'd made, he wrinkled his nose like it was something disgusting. "Is this what you call dinner?" he snapped. "You think people work all day just to come home to this?" Before I could respond, Ethan slammed the plate onto the floor. Rice and sauce splattered across the kitchen. I stood frozen in place. "You should take a cooking class. Or ask my mom. At least she knows how to take care of a husband," he muttered as he loosened his tie and headed upstairs. I once loved that man. Deeply. So much so that I left everything behind in my hometown. My job, my friends, my peaceful life. To move to Chicago with him. But now, the man who stood in front of me every day felt like a stranger. Cold, bitter, and frighteningly indifferent. He had never taken me to a single prenatal appointment. Every time I said, "The doctor recommends someone accompany me," he would just say, "You've got legs. You can go by yourself." I used to hope that when the baby was born, everything would change, that seeing our child would soften Ethan's heart. But the closer that day came, the deeper I sank into a pit of hopelessness. One night, right after I stepped out of the shower, I saw Ethan sitting on the couch watching the news. I gently asked, "My back hurts, more than usual. I think the baby's coming soon. Should we pack the hospital bag together next week?" Without taking his eyes off the screen, he replied, "Pack it yourself. I'm busy. Stop making everything dramatic." I froze, one hand cradling my belly, the other clutching my robe. It felt like I was living with someone who didn't see me as his wife. Just an inconvenience eating up his time. I used to believe that if I tried hard enough, this marriage could go back to how it was in the beginning. But reality has a way of stripping illusions away. Some people never change, no matter how much you sacrifice. I looked at him, the man I once thought would be my rock, and wondered, am I living with someone who only knows how to love himself, while I'm just a supporting character in his selfish story? I still remember that morning when Ethan walked into the kitchen, beaming like he'd just won the lottery. Completely out of sync with the heavy atmosphere that had blanketed our home for weeks, he grinned and said, "Great news! Next week, the whole family's going on a vacation to Lake Geneva. 3 days. My parents are coming too. The hotel's booked, rental cars ready. All you have to do is pack." I thought I misheard him. "Next week is my due date, Ethan. I can't travel right now." He paused for a second, furrowed his brow, and replied as if I'd just mentioned something trivial. "It's just a due date. It's not like they're always exact. Besides, you're not sick, you're just pregnant." I stood in silence. The coldness in his tone sent a chill down my spine. "You're really forcing me to go even though I could give birth any moment?" Ethan sighed. "You're making this a bigger deal than it is. My parents have been looking forward to this for a month. They want you to relax a bit." I wanted to argue more, but he turned away, muttering, "You always turn everything into a problem." That night, I couldn't sleep. My belly felt heavier than ever, and the back pain made lying still unbearable. But what hurt more was the feeling of being treated like excess baggage, something to be wedged into his and his parents' vacation plans. The next morning, I gathered every ounce of courage to speak up again. "Ethan, I really can't go. I don't want anything to happen to the baby." He set down his coffee cup without even looking at me. "You can just rest in the car. It's a new rental, the seats are as soft as a bed. Don't complicate things. I've already made the plans." I felt abandoned inside my own marriage. On the day of the trip, I said I wasn't feeling well and hoped to stay home. But Ethan insisted I go, even emphasizing, "If you don't come, my parents will think you're rude, and I don't want to upset them. Reluctantly, I picked up my bag and climbed into the SUV, my steps heavy, my heart colder than the air outside. As we drove away from the neighborhood, a sinking feeling hit me. Something terrible was about to happen. We hadn't gone far when I felt a warm gush soak into the seat beneath me. I looked down, panicked. My water had broken. Ethan, pull over. My water just broke. The baby's coming." He looked back, panicked, and slammed on the brakes. The car skidded slightly on the road. "What? Seriously? Oh my God," he stammered. I clutched my belly as a sharp pain shot through me. "Take me to the hospital, right now!" But instead of helping, Ethan grimaced and looked down at the seat where I was sitting, the wet stain spreading quickly. He yelled, "Riley, you've ruined the whole car. This is an expensive rental, you can't." I stared at him in disbelief, not trusting my ears. He got out of the car, opened the passenger door, and coldly pulled me out. "Get out! I need to clean this before it gets worse. Call a taxi. I've got to take the car to the wash nearby." I screamed through tears. "What the hell are you doing? The baby is coming. I can't get to the hospital by myself." But Ethan turned his back. "I can't let my parents see the car like this. You're tough. You'll figure it out." And then he drove off, without a trace of remorse. I stood alone in the empty parking lot, clutching my belly, gasping for air. A powerful contraction nearly brought me to my knees. Just when I thought no one could see me, a familiar voice rang out. "Riley, oh my God, what happened?" It was Julia, my neighbor, who was on her way out for errands. As without asking questions, Julia immediately called an ambulance and held my hand tightly while we waited. Every time I screamed from the pain, she gripped my hand harder and whispered, "It's okay, I'm right here. You and the baby are going to be just fine." As the ambulance took me away, I looked back. The rental car Ethan had driven was nowhere to be seen. And in that moment of unbearable pain, I made a silent vow to myself. I will not let my child grow up with a father like that. The ambulance sped through the gates of Central Memorial Hospital, sirens wailing, lights flashing. I lost all sense of time. The pain was relentless, my breathing ragged, but the one thing I could feel was a small, warm hand gripping mine so tightly it felt like we were fused together. It was Julia, the kind neighbor who didn't abandon me in my darkest moment. She not only brought me to the hospital, but also did what I couldn't: contact my parents in Ohio. I didn't have the strength to dial, nor the clarity to recall their numbers, but Julia went through my wallet, found their information, and called my mom right away. "This is Julie. I'm Riley's neighbor. She's in labor, but she was left alone on the street. I've brought her to the hospital. Please come as soon as you can." That's how my parents found out, and they hit the road immediately, driving over 300 miles just to get to their daughter before she gave birth. A journey of love I will never forget. When I was brought into the delivery room, Julia stayed with me the entire time. She wiped the sweat from my forehead, held my hand through every contraction, and kept whispering, "You're doing great, Riley. Just a little more. You're so strong." Even through the agony that made me want to scream, I could feel my heart being comforted by the steady presence of a woman I once thought of as just the lady next door. Time seemed to stand still in the moment I heard the doctor shout, "She's fully dilated. Get ready." I used to think I'd be alone in a quiet hospital room when I gave birth, but I wasn't. I didn't have my husband, but I had Julia. I had doctors, nurses, and a life pushing forward inside me. And then, amidst the pushing, the labored breathing, the hand-holding, a cry pierced the air. Sharp, strong, full of life. My baby had entered the world. I cried silently. Tears flooded down my face, every bit of pain, despair, and loneliness washed away by that first cry. Sometime later, after being moved to the recovery room, my mother arrived. She rushed in, eyes red, grabbed my hand, and choked out, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I got here late." I didn't say anything. I just held her hand and squeezed it tight. Beside her stood my dad, normally a man of few words, but that day, his eyes were brimming with emotion. The room was small, but it was filled with a love I thought I had lost during all those months with Ethan. Julia stepped quietly to the corner, giving space for my family. But just before she stepped out, she turned back with a gentle smile and said, "I've informed the hospital that Riley doesn't want to see anyone named Ethan." I nodded, holding back tears. "Thank you. You're like an angel." Julia chuckled softly. "I'm not an angel. I just can't stand seeing a woman treated like that. You're a mother. You deserve respect." I cried again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. As my mother held the newborn in her arms, she whispered, "My sweet little one, you came into this world under such special circumstances, but from today on, you have your mom, your grandparents, and kind people like Miss Julia who will always be by your side." I looked at my baby, rosy skin, tiny hand wrapped around my finger, and I knew, from that very moment, I was no longer the timid woman who once stayed silent in front of Ethan. I had done something extraordinary, brought a new life into this world, even after being abandoned in the middle of labor. 3 days after giving birth, I was still at the hospital while they monitored my baby's condition. Though my body still ached, every time I looked at my child's face, I felt renewed. The wounds inside me began to ease, not because they had disappeared, but because I no longer felt alone. That morning, while I was nursing, my mom walked in with a strange expression on her face. She held up her phone in front of me. "You need to see this," she said, her voice filled with both anger and shock. On the screen was a video that had gone viral on social media. The person filming remained anonymous, but the footage was unmistakable. It showed Ethan yelling at me and throwing me out of the car in the parking lot, ignoring the fact that my water had just broken. Even though my face had been blurred, the voice, the way I walked, my maternity dress, and my purse made it clear that it was me. And Ethan? Every detail of his face was captured. His coldness, his rage, and that chilling line, "Get out of the car, you've made a mess," cut like a knife. In the comments, thousands of people expressed outrage. How can any man be that cruel to his pregnant wife? He should be charged for abandoning someone in a medical emergency. I recognize that guy. He works at Finch Financial. The CEO should be informed. I sat in silence. What happened that day had been a personal trauma I wanted to bury. I never expected it to become a tidal wave that shattered the polished image Ethan had carefully built. That afternoon, Julia came to visit me and the baby. She walked into the room carrying a basket of fruit, but her face was clouded with thought. "There's something I need to tell you, Riley," she began once it was just the two of us in the room. I looked up, slightly startled by her serious tone. "Go ahead." She sat at the edge of the bed, gently took my hand, and spoke slowly. "My husband is Marcus Bell, the CEO of Finch Financial." I blinked. Finch Financial? That was where Ethan worked as a mid-level manager. My heart sank, like I had just discovered a piece of the puzzle I never saw coming. Julia continued, "I've known for a while that Ethan worked at the same company as my husband, but I didn't want to interfere in someone else's personal life, until that day happened." I stayed silent, letting her go on. I showed Marcus the video. I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen it anymore. And you know what? He was furious. A man who can abandon his wife right before she gives birth isn't someone who can be trusted to manage people or money. My jaw dropped, and before I could say anything, Julia added, "This afternoon, Ethan was temporarily suspended while they investigate. Marcus also sent a formal report to the board of directors." I could hardly believe it. Ethan, the man who always acted untouchable, was now facing the full consequences of his actions. "And in case you didn't know," Julia added, "the online community has already identified Ethan's full name and workplace. They even found his parents' Facebook profiles. Everything is in the spotlight now." I sighed. not out of pity for Ethan, but out of disbelief that the truth had unraveled so quickly. Julia gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. I know this might make you uneasy, but you didn't do anything wrong. He brought this on himself. I looked at my son sleeping peacefully in the crib, then back at Julia. Thank you. Not just for saving me that day, but for not staying silent, I said, my voice trembling. Oh, Julia gave me a warm smile. No one deserves to be treated the way you were. And I believe sometimes justice begins with something as small as a phone camera being turned on. That night, I opened my phone and saw dozens of missed calls from Ethan, along with a flood of messages. Riley, can you just let me explain? I've been suspended. Can you say something to my boss for me? You're ruining my entire career. I read every word but not a single real apology. I put the phone down, held my son in my arms and whispered, We don't need anyone else to live a good life, sweetheart. I promise to give you the best life possible, starting by never going back to the man who left us behind. I left the hospital after 5 days, feeling more stable emotionally, though my heart still carried wounds that hadn't yet healed. Back at my parents' home in Ohio, I was welcomed by a cozy crib already set up, a private room with all the essentials, and the gentle eyes of my mom and dad. The very things I had once longed to receive from my husband but never did. The day after returning home, I made a decision that could no longer be delayed. I would divorce Ethan. Not out of spite, but because if a man can abandon his wife in labor over a rental car, he doesn't deserve to be a husband, let alone a father. My parents weren't surprised when I told them. My father simply placed his hand gently on my shoulder and said, We'll stand by you all the way. My mother cradled her grandson and nodded quietly, as if she'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. Thankfully, my dad had an old friend, a seasoned attorney named Benjamin Cole, who had worked in the federal court system. He came to our home the next morning, bringing with him both professionalism and a warmth that reassured me from the first handshake. Riley, let me be clear from the start, Benjamin said. You're doing the right thing, and I'm here to make sure Ethan can never hurt you or your son again. I nodded, unable to find the words. He guided me through writing a full account of what happened, gathering every piece of evidence. Text messages Ethan sent while I was in labor, the viral video, and most importantly, a recorded phone call I'd made after leaving the hospital. It was late one night when Ethan had kept calling, and I finally picked up, putting my phone on record to protect myself. Riley, listen, I know I messed up, Ethan's voice stammered through the phone. I've been suspended. The whole company looks at me like I'm a monster. Are you happy now? I stayed silent, letting him go on. I didn't mean to leave you. It's just, I panicked. And the car was a rental. I didn't want to get charged extra, but now I've lost everything. You have to take some responsibility too. I gripped the phone tightly. Are you calling to apologize or to blame me? There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then Ethan said flatly, If you come back, I'll forgive you. We can start over. I need you. The house is a mess. My friends won't talk to me. My parents are being harassed. It's all because of you. I hung up immediately. That recording became a crucial piece of the legal file Benjamin prepared. At first, Ethan acted defiant. When Benjamin sent the official notice requesting a divorce negotiation, Ethan responded with a long-winded email full of lines like, I do not consent to a divorce. I am not obligated to support a child I'm not allowed to see. I'll go public if she tries to ruin my reputation. But everything changed quickly when Benjamin replied with a firm legal statement. My client has documented evidence of emotional abuse, abandonment in a medical emergency, and neglect of parental responsibility. If you wish to take this to court, we are fully prepared. Just 2 days later, Ethan caved. He had a friend, also a lawyer, call Benjamin and say he wanted to settle quickly and privately. During a recorded online session, Ethan appeared looking drained, stripped of his usual smugness. He opened with, "Riley, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong, but I've lost a lot too, so I hope you won't demand too much." I answered calmly, "I'm not demanding anything. I'm simply reclaiming the justice my son and I deserve." In the end, Ethan agreed to sign the divorce papers, gave up custody rights, and was required to make monthly child support payments as ordered. For me, that marriage didn't end in tears, it ended in clarity. And I knew those hardest moments were the very beginning of a life where I would be stronger, freer, and more complete, for myself and for my son. A few weeks after the divorce was officially granted by the court, my life turned a brand new page, one of peace, lightness, and most importantly, one completely free of Ethan. According to attorney Benjamin, Ethan was officially terminated from Finch Financial. After reviewing the overwhelming public backlash and the undeniable footage, the company's board of directors had no choice but to end his employment. Not only did Ethan lose his job, but his access to the company's internal financial systems was revoked, and he now faced the possibility of a professional ethics investigation. To make matters worse, the lease on Ethan's apartment was terminated early due to non-payment. According to an old neighbor, he had moved back in with his parents in the suburbs, looking gaunt and avoiding eye contact with anyone whenever he stepped outside. As for me, the woman once left behind in the middle of labor, I was slowly finding my way back to myself. At my parents' home in Ohio, I woke up each day to the sound of my son's giggles. I named him Noah, a name that reminded me of new life after a storm. My mother would often joke, "Noah is the baby who brought our family back together," and I believed that was true. After returning home, I kept in close contact with Julia, the neighbor who had saved me more than once. Julia didn't just continue to support me through recovery, she became an unofficial member of my family. Every time Julia visited, my mom would cheerfully prepare tea and snacks, and my dad would bring out his homemade wine. The warmth in our home made me forget, at times, just how suffocatingly lonely life had once been. One day, Julia invited me to her husband's birthday party. Marcus Bell, CEO of Finch Financial. I was hesitant at first, but then Julia said something that left me no room to refuse. "I want you to truly live again, not just live to forget Ethan, but live for yourself." I brought Noah along. At the Bells' large estate, I was welcomed like family, and that's when I met Cameron, the son of Julia and Marcus. Cameron, 33 years old, was a software engineer at a biotech startup, tall, kind, and with warm eyes like his father. As I stood holding Noah, Cameron walked over and smiled. "What a cute little guy. You must be Noah, right?" I looked up, nodded, and smiled softly. "And I'm Riley, the woman trying to relearn how to live with kindness." Cameron chuckled. "Then you've already come further than most." After that evening, we stayed in touch. At first, it was just a few messages about children's books. Cameron had given Noah a beautiful, full-color French comic. Then came the late-night calls, Sunday afternoon coffee meetups. The times Cameron drove all the way to Ohio just to play with Noah and enjoy one of my mom's home-cooked meals. I had once promised myself I'd never open my heart to another man, but Cameron didn't enter my life as a potential lover. He came as a friend, an ally, a wholesome piece of the world I had once believed I no longer belonged in. One day, my mom whispered to me as I cleared the dinner table, "There's no rush, honey, but if you feel warm when Cameron is around, maybe that's your answer." I sat watching Noah lying happily in Cameron's arms, his face glowing like a tiny sun, and I realized some wounds can only heal through the light brought by unexpected people. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this for sure. I didn't fall. I got back up, and I'm moving forward, not alone anymore. From Riley's story, I've learned that no one deserves to be abandoned or belittled, especially when they're carrying new life within them. A mother's resilience, the kindness of a stranger, and justice born from truth? These are the threads that wove Riley's powerful recovery. In real life, sometimes we must endure the deepest pain to recognize our own worth. And the moments when we feel weakest might just be when we become strongest. What do you think about Riley's journey? Should she open her heart again? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more touching and meaningful stories about family life.